have been practicing with my husband Shantanu Sharma under our firm Shantanu Sharma and Associates. And also we have recently started green ribbon landscapes specifically for designing landscape architecture, because landscape is something which I specialize in. So I am today presenting architecture within landscape architecture. I am very thankful to Nexknos to give me a platform today presenting live. मेरा ये कहना है कि during after post COVID and lockdowns एक open spaces की requirement एक human being के अंदर बहुत ज़्यादा generate हुई है during this lockdown period. Focusing more on how in architecture we can provide open spaces and how landscape can actually, help in deriving those open spaces. This is one of our projects. We did a small cafe near Samor Bagh on the Palace Road in Udaipur. There were 2 trees on site. One was this, which you can see here, this green canopy, little bit reflecting, which was Harshingar tree, and this was a neem tree. So our main aim while doing this project was कि उसकी एक भी डाली नहीं कटनी चाहिए. This neem tree beautifully, shadows this terrace of this cafe. The flooring pattern which I did for this cafe is inspired by a Brazilian landscape architect, Brul Mas. So his works, he is a very avid painter. So from one of his painting, I was inspired for making this flooring design. And I like to give a title to this photograph as looked from the sky. We know that architecture and landscape architecture both hinge on the degree of enclosure. Architecture also creates an enclosure, and even landscape architecture does. Our main aim as designers should be to, first of all, focus on the threshold where these two zones come together. And our objective should be to come up with a single unified concept which is programmatical and spatial, which treats the interior and exterior as linked entities, because we are basically generating a human experience. This is one of my very favorite projects. It's in UK. Can you guess what this is? Can you guess what this is? What kind of project it is? Is it a university? Is it an institution? It's a botanical garden. This is Eden Garden. And this is a project, you see a lot of these bubbles. So these are basically ethynyl propylene. It's a very long word. It's basically a kind of a polymer which is forming this covering. And these are called biomes. And these biomes have vegetation of all over the world. If they even grow their own cocoa. And it's in UK. Cocoa grows in Africa in a tropical climate. So these biomes are basically having climatically controlled environments, and they have rainforest and every kind of vegetation all around the world. And this thing has become an icon in England. So when President Byron came to meet Queen Elizabeth, they met here. So what I was thinking is rather thinking of landscape as an afterthought in the design process. It should always be strived that we design with our designing process to articulate a seam and overlap. So this is a residence in Surat. This has a house on both, like the house is divided by this courtyard. It's a very linear house and it is divided by courtyard. And this courtyard, that landscaped courtyard, is actually a connection. It's an overlap between the two houses. This is one of my projects. Meeta ma'am can recognize it. So Meeta ma'am did interiors for this project and I did the landscape designing. What we are saying is that on the interface where the indoors and the outdoors meet, we should focus on the intermediate scale between the inside and outside, and materials become a very important and a connective tissue between the inside and the outside. As designers, we need to think outside the building and understand that we are creating cohesive environments. Which includes the landscape design, and each component is purposefully a design extension and should be pushed off to the end of, not should be pushed off to the end of the project, but should be considered an important design variable in the first stages of planning. What you see here is a 3D of an upcoming resort here in Udaipur, which we are designing we are doing the architecture as well as the landscape for this project. So using landscape and architect to support each other. This is a sketch because we were all talking about from yesterday that, you know, how we design process. So this is a sketch. You can see the contours underneath it. So basically this is a farmhouse we completed recently in Barodia area in Udaipur. And this was a site which the road came in from here and it went all the way up to there, and where you can see that road is ending, the level difference was almost 25 feet. And the house was already made on site. We were purely invited here to do landscape. And this is the second lockdown time. And it was clearly stated that this is a place where they want to be outdoor. They want to experience the nature. The photograph of this will come ahead in my presentation, the completed picture. How do we use landscape and architecture design to support each other? So firstly, we can do is by extending the interior space to the exterior, which increases the use of both simply by being thoughtful and thinking of the agency. So in this house, this interior space was basically a living area, and this courtyard was provided adjacent to this living area, and this whole living area was opening up into this courtyard. So basically, an interior and exterior place had a connectivity between them. The client wanted this champa tree on site. He had planted 10 years ago a champa tree in his original residence, which was a rented place. And he didn't want to uproot it. So we actually took a branch from that tree and planted here, and it grew very well. What we are making is connections of memories. So he knows that this is a part of his plant which he had planted there, and he has brought that to his now residence. Extending interiors to exterior, this is his gym place, and this is his everyday morning yoga view, which is his back garden, and every day he views this thing. So what his aim was that from each room of his house, when he sees outside, he has a part of nature coming in. Defining the edges of architecture by adding paving materials, plant materials, which enhance the texture and create highlights. So this is the entrance of the same house, and we have added a lot of planting material, you know, to give a little softness to these edges, these hard edges, and you know, they create different palette, they give a different palette to the eyes, each day, every day. Sometimes they say that these lilies have hummingbirds over them. They call me and tell me all these stories, that aaj hummingbird aaye the, when the spring was there were a lot of butterflies. The major constraint for me as a landscape architect in this project was that their son was a very allergic person. So, and he had pollen allergies. So I had to use such plant materials which don't create pollen allergies or don't aggravate his allergies. So I had a very limited planting palette. Small intervention I did. This is Hotel Panna Villas. They already had an existing building. This was the existing Panna Villas, this facade which we see. And this facade, which we can little bit see, was a new extension. And because of Vastu, they had to leave this strip of place as this was becoming the Brahmastan of the site. They didn't wanted any soft material to be used, like grass or anything, but they wanted very nice hardscaping. Because obviously this was becoming their service zone. Like from one building, you will go to the another building, determining the space between the buildings. And hardscaping and gave a very good character to this transit space. So we used, I think so I have used 4 stones and made this design. So, and added lights to, you know, create this. So this is a picture which was taken by me just as the lights were done on the site. So that's why there's not much of a cleaning in the picture, but now it looks very nice. So the earlier site plan which I had shown, so this is the real-time picture of the site. So this was the day 1 on the site. So they had already made the road which goes up to the farmhouse, confused that they had this big chunk of space in front of their house and how to treat it. And they were having two level differences, like I'm standing in the veranda of house and clicking the picture. So this is level 1, which is 6 feet below, and that's level 2, which is another 6 feet below. What we did for them was we made a swimming pool for them, which had this view of the whole valley, which was there, garden area. And there is a gazebo as well, but वो नीम के पेड़ के पीछे छुप गया है. So this was this whole place. And they wanted to have a very nice receptive feeling on as they enter. So we made this whole area as a paved area because they have a huge family and they tend to have family gatherings and everything. They wanted area where they can play. And also this whole area was paved with stones, Dholpur and the Kashiya ka Patthar. And we introduced this kind of a concentric flooring pattern to give a character to this place, providing impactful traits to simple areas like entrance and parking areas. So landscape and materials which we use in landscape can define the whole site. So these are side pictures of a project we did almost 7 years ago. When we had come on the site, इस पूरी site पे सिर्फ एक नीम का पेड़ था. They wanted this much big of parking space because they have huge gatherings in these places. We had provided a 10,000 square feet of lawn to accommodate all these spaces, and also the kitchen garden, creating breathing spaces between dense urban fabric. This everyone can, I think so from Udaipur, everyone can relate. This is Suraj Pole, all lit because the picture was taken on the 75th Independence Day. This has been developed between the dense fabric of all the buildings around. And I was highly privileged to be a part of the designing team of this project. And Smart City gave me this opportunity.